I'm quite nervous because we're starting rehearsals next week. I thought we had plenty of time, but it's actually come on us really, really quickly. The name of the play that we're rehearsing for is Tanika's Journey, and that's Tanika's sign name where the I is, Tanika's Journey. The story is about a woman who's from Sri Lanka and she's deaf. She wants to move to England, but it's really, really difficult. The journey across, she has to go through a forest, she has to go through the Ukraine, she has to go through Russia to try and get there. The reason that I chose to do a story about Tanika, about this fictional character, is because I met a deaf person who told me his true story about his journey from Sri Lanka to England. And I think it's really important to tell a story like this from a deaf perspective. There's no stories out there that are like this, and I really want to tell an untold story from a deaf person's experience. I've always been fascinated reading about immigrants, news and television stories all about people immigrating to England. But I wanted to know what it was like, what made them want to leave their families, their home countries, what made them want to risk their lives to come to another country. Would they hide in an engine? Would they hide themselves? Did they risk their life? Some people have died on the journey here. Some people's boats have tried to get here on a boat. Some people have tried to do it in the back of a lorry to try and get to England. It's been very, very difficult to try and escape their war-torn countries, and I've just found myself absolutely fascinated, meaning that their home country, their war-torn country, must be so awful that they want to escape. And it made me think about what must this be like for a deaf person. You know, what do they know about the war, what's going on? Is the reason that they want to go because of the war? Or do they think the war is just normal and they just carry on with their lives? So I wanted to know what it was like from a deaf person's perspective. Did they understand about the politics because of this limited access to information? So I was doing some research about deaf people and their experience about immigrating and about being an immigrant, and the deaf community weren't very forthcoming because they weren't actually allowed, or they felt very scared to tell their story. So we met this guy who had come from Sri Lanka. It took me 1 year to find this person, and I asked him to tell me his story. We didn't know each other, and I got to know him. We met up a few times and he told me about his experience from Sri Lanka and about the war in Sri Lanka. He didn't get a plane and just arrive in England. He had to walk through a forest, through Russia, through the Ukraine, for 3 months. And as he told me the story, I found myself becoming absolutely engrossed in his story and thought we could really base a play on these experiences. And through workshops and Q&A sessions, I got a lot of information. And the fictional character of Tanika, I chose a woman rather than this guy that actually happened to, because I thought for a woman, a woman must be even more vulnerable. And when the real person, the deaf man, told me himself he was actually accompanied by his cousin, I've actually based the play on a woman. She's on her own. She's got nobody to accompany her. So I'm really interested to explore how she felt, what her mind was doing at the time of going through the forest, how she felt within the group of these refugees going through the forest. Does she have the will to carry on when she's in the middle of winter through the Ukraine or Russia? Does she have the willpower to carry on? So that's really what the play's about. So I'm working with a creative team. There's myself, Andrew Muir. He's our literary associate director. And we're also working with Kate Furby, and she's our creative interpreter. And we've also got somebody from Frantic Assembly, and her name's Naomi Said. And she's our movement consultant. She's fantastic. And we've also got Sophie Allen. And Sophie has been to Sri Lanka many times, so she's very skilled in Sri Lankan Sign Language, and she's been teaching Matthew and Nadia, our actors, about Sri Lankan Sign Language for the play. And it's been absolutely amazing to learn the language, because the sign for have in Sri Lanka is like this, and the sign for can in Sri Lanka, it's like this. Odd, because in Britain that means, you know, without or nothing, but in Sri Lanka it's a really strong sign meaning I can. So it's really amazing to learn Sri Lankan Sign Language for the play, because the play will actually combine British Sign Language and Sri Lankan Sign Language and English and some foreign words, and it's very, very visual play, so it's going to be accessible for both a deaf and a hearing audience. So rehearsals are starting next week. Oh, so wish us luck.